Welcome everybody to another interview session here of the Heart and Soul conversations that we're having. And today I actually present you to a really good friend of mine, Michael Olabode, who is a relationship expert, is a really well-versed person in yogic philosophy and other philosophies and self-development. We've been working together for years on different projects, and I'm so excited to have you here, Michael.
Thank you very much. I really
Super
appreciate
cool.
being here.
I'll get to you in a second to share a little bit more about you and your journey, because it's actually a really interesting background that you have. But just so you know, guys, what we'll be talking about today is a topic that's close to everyone's heart, basically. It's relationships and basically what it is that you're doing that keeps you single, or if you're in a relationship, might send you back to being single. And Michael is one of those people that I go to for relationship advice. Don't tell anyone, he's more than 10 years younger than I am, but he's still my person that when there's anything wrong in my own relationships, I go and get his opinion. And he is very well versed in masculine, feminine energy sort of conversations, which is like a vast field that's incredibly fascinating. But before I get into talking, I'll hand over to you, Michael. Introduce yourself, and then we'll start chatting about what we can do better in our relationships to finally have happy and successful ones.
First of all, thank you very much, Henrike, for allowing me to be here. As always, it's a great pleasure to be in your company, as always. I had a philosophy while I was younger that was, I guess, partially imparted by my uncle. And he mentioned that, one of the goals of life is to make money while you're sleeping.
I didn't know he said that. That's awesome. I love your uncle.
So what happened is that kind of pushed me into studying business at university. And it was all about the high life. I went to university in London, one of the most successful business universities in London, Cass Business School. But I had a little bit of a change. What happened is during university, I ran into one of the students of the mentor of Nelson Mandela and Muhammad Ali, and one of my good friends, motivational coach Jay Shetty as well. He was at university with me, and they completely changed my life. They introduced me to leadership principles, relationship philosophy, and this masculine, feminine science as well. So that took me on a whole journey to India, where I spent many years back and forth traveling from India, studying these texts. And then I ended up getting invited to speak around these texts on the masculine, feminine science and relationship principles, because to go to India to study it was very difficult. So people were very much valuing me being able to bring and share that knowledge from what I learned there around the world.
Yeah, and you've been everywhere. Like, you've been speaking in Africa, you're speaking in Europe, all over the place. Now you're in Australia. You have been for a few years. I know that I nicked you from your travels and kind of forced you to come and stay and live at the retreat center I used to manage and work there with us, teaching to a lot of people. So
it was the best kidnap.
That was the best kidnap for sure. That was mutually the best. Anyway, so as I said before, you're quite the relationship expert, and I've always found incredible value and depth in the insights that you have about masculine, feminine principles. Now, to clarify for our audience, this is not about men versus women. Masculine, like all have masculine and feminine energy. I know that when I'm, for example, especially in a leadership position, or when I'm solo parenting, I have a lot of masculine energy, and I actually sometimes need to dial that down to even be able to be in a relationship with a man without scaring him off. Can you explain a little bit to our audience what masculine, feminine energy actually stands for and means? And then we can launch into how to apply this into our relationships.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And it's great that you began with one of the misconceptions or myths around masculine and feminine that is just related to gender. It's interesting that Facebook has over 56 gender options. 56 gender options, yeah. And generally, masculine, feminine, what some people think it is just simply referring to the biologically birthed male or the biologically birthed female. However, it goes way beyond gender, as you were sharing. The masculine, feminine energies is something that exists within each and every person, but they have the masculine and feminine energies in different amounts.
That's right.
Different amounts. So to break down, I guess, what masculine and feminine means, if you take anything that's consistent, for example, let's take a drum. Let's take a guitar. pretty straightforward. So guitar has a certain structure, and that's very consistent. How you play the guitar, or what you play on the guitar, that's variety. So the consistent part of the guitar is masculine, and what you play on the guitar, the variety, the harmonies, the chords that you can play, that's feminine. So in everything in our lives, there's an aspect of what is consistent or structured or together or focused, and that which has variety and spontaneity.
And flow to it, huh?
And flow as well. And so we find that in anything we're doing, there's always an aspect which is consistent, which holds structure, and an aspect which is variety or holds multiple expressions. So that's the basic idea of masculine and feminine.
And I have, just to add to this, I have occasionally had conversations with people when I've been teaching around this, where people sometimes get a little bit offended about why does that mean masculine? Why does this mean feminine? And it's not a qualifier of a good or a bad or right or wrong. It's just to explain different polarities and how the interplay between those two things happens and how they weave together, because they both have a purpose in life. And it's mainly how, I guess, in the masculine, the male mind works in a more linear, structured, goal-driven, get there and have the blinkers on to not get distracted sort of way. Versus as women, the pure feminine energy, we are more kind of focused on everything at once, on what happens on the periphery, on working together, and on communicating and all of those things. So there are more attributes that are classically attributed to the feminine energy. And there is no evaluation into what's better or what's worse. It's just different expressions, and at some point it's been assigned in that way, correct?
100%. In other words, there's not a good or bad, right, wrong, superior, inferior, best, worst. It's just simply two different polarities. The way I love to explain it is you have an air conditioner, and an air conditioner can blow out cool air or warm air. It's the same electrical energies that's being used. It's just expressed in different ways according to the situation. So how I see it is, yes, you have biologically someone who's birthed as a male or a female, and they may have certain tendencies, certain ways of processing styles. However, it's not limited to those particular tendencies or those proclivities. The reason why we have proclivities and tendencies is because when we repeat certain patterns of behavior, it's a lot more efficient. So we have certain ways that we think, certain natural styles, certain personality styles, and that's totally fine. The issue isn't how masculine or feminine someone is. The issue is how honest we are with how much masculinity or femininity we have within ourselves and from somebody else, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. So one example, an easy example I love to give, is if you are biologically born male, it is likely or more common for you to speak only once you've understood what you'd like to say. If you're biologically born a woman, you are more likely to speak to understand and to come to a conclusion with what you want to say.
100%. And I know that frustrates the heck out of some men. I'm totally this. I talk, and as I am talking, I'm clarifying in my mind what I'm saying. So I'm just talking for the purpose of clarifying, whereas some people just get totally overwhelmed with that, and they tend to be male.
Exactly. So now let's dive into that a little bit. Just that example. So it's said that women generally process externally, men generally process internally. You see? So that's a style. However, for me, it's different. It's the other way around. When it comes to dealing with philosophy or logic, I can process internally and speak what I want to say. But when it comes to emotions, I actually have to process externally. So in that area, it's not about me trying to process my emotions internally. It's just about being honest with the style and the way that I am feminine in that area, and communicating that to a person so that they understand what I'm doing. And so sometimes you have to let her speak in order to come to a conclusion. Sometimes you have to let him think to come to a conclusion.
And I find that so hard. I am, as of recent, in the last few months, in a new relationship after many, many, many years of being by myself. And for example, to hold the space for someone processing internally, where all I want is talk about it and have an answer, it's a real challenge. But to realize that that's part of the process and not an offense to me or someone not wanting to talk, but to really, it's just a different way of processing. Hard as it may be for me to wait it out, it's a necessary element. Coming to this is a point I've heard in a book by one of my favorite relationship authors, Alison Armstrong, you know her. The book is called The Queen's Code. She has this concept that I find absolutely hilarious and so spot on. She talks about frog farming. So how do we turn perfectly great guys we meet who show up in a new relationship as the prince we've been dreaming to meet? And how can we as women, for us in particular, accidentally or through certain behaviors we display and through certain things what we do, and that's often about being too much in our masculine, too much trying to control things, frog farm them, so turn a prince into a frog, not the other way around like we are hoping to do, right? And I think this ties in quite well with what we're talking about today. So the things that we need to do in order to have happy relationships, or how not to scare off a perfectly great guy. Your floor. Share with us some of the insights you have, especially from that masculine feminine polarity sort of.
Sure. And that's a really insightful, question, comment, because it's something that many people are dealing with both ways, both genders, but it's definitely something that's very prevalent and present today, because sometimes we've been connected to that person who is a bit of a twin flame, who is a bit of a Mr. or Miss Right, but because we haven't related to them in a appropriate way, we may have actually pushed them away.
Yeah.
So it's it's a great and relevant comment and question. So another way we can describe masculine and feminine is something like this. Let's say I bake you an array of vegan cupcakes.
Thanks for
that way everybody's pleased. And now, I bake you an array of vegan cupcakes. There's like 25 different varieties, and I give it to you. And yeah, you really appreciate them. You like them. Let's say I bake you a set of vegan cupcakes and you don't like any of them. What happens is this. In the first scenario, I'm giving you something that you can receive. In the second scenario, I'm giving you or offering you something you cannot receive. What happens is the masculine, I'm just going to take a general example, but we can also switch it the other way around. The masculine is sharing or providing not just necessarily money or the traditional way of kind of money or just working, but providing a certain amount of structure or emotional play or affection. What can happen is if we block receiving that, it can turn them off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Been there, done that, for sure.
It makes sense. So there's love is expressed in two ways, through giving and through receiving.
Absolutely.
Not taking, receiving. It's very different. So what can happen is when somebody has a genuine offering for us, if we are not in a position to receive it because of a lack of appreciation or trauma or whatever that may be, that person who wants to give and share, the love is blocked, because love is like an energy. It's like a dance. Let's say we're dancing together. I put a foot forward. You put a foot forward. That doesn't work. I put a foot forward or a leg forward. You have to put your leg back. You see the point? So it's a dance. It's a bit of a flow. And so what can often happen is either we are paired with someone who can give and receive in a nice way, but we aren't ready to do that because we're not been used to love or affection, or we connect with someone who what they give is not actually compatible with what I can receive, or what I give is not compatible with what they can receive. And so instead of communicating it and saying, hey, what is it you'd like to receive? What is it I can give? What is it you'd like to give? What is it I can receive? We try to change that person and force them to take what we're given. That's not giving, that's, I don't know, something else. So that's often what can happen. We either find someone who is actually good for us, but we don't necessarily deal and interact with them properly, or we find someone who isn't necessarily harmonious with our natural psychology, and then we try to change them instead. And so the question that I love to ask people when they meet someone or thinking about someone is this: if this person didn't grow or massively change, would you still be satisfied with them?
That's right. If they would forever be just exactly as they are right now, would they still be the right person? Now, funnily enough, though, this does, and yes, I'm with you on that one, this does also reveal itself over time, though. That's often something like, I'm in a relationship a couple of months now, and we're still discovering so much about each other. And especially like when the very first, like you're always putting your perfect first foot forward, like you're past that stage, you're also discovering, like, I have my grumpy days and I'm being discovered in that, and that's probably not always a pleasant experience, and vice versa. So how do you, for example, like, interesting question happens in my life, how do you then give feedback without offending, or how do you negotiate that without criticizing? Because I know that the female or the feminine often likes to bring things to the table, talk about them, to sort them out, because we feel that by bringing something and having the conversation, we can sort out the problem and come back into feeling that connection and that love that we want, versus it's easy to not see how we might be completely inadvertently really making the man feel disrespected, or making them feel like they're not good enough, or we're not willing to receive, when all we want is sort out like a slight off thing in the relationship. How do we negotiate that?
Gently.
Difficult thing.
Gently.
Yeah.
The reason why, and it's true, because you're with a gentleman, they relate to gentle. You're a gentle lady, they relate to gentle. So gently.
Nice.
Now, here's an interesting kind of perspective. And again, it's a general thing. It doesn't necessarily, there's always anomalies, there's always exceptions to the rule. However, generally speaking, the female is like a kitten on the outside, but has the heart of a lion on the inside. And generally speaking, externally, the man is like a lion on the outside, but is like a kitten on the inside.
It's so true. And it took me parenting a boy to really
realize
come to appreciate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you might have the tough, macho, out there guy, but as soon as he's attached and connected and feels that affection from the feminine influence, feels that emotional feminine exchange, his heart becomes very soft. And so what happens is, in the masculine feminine science, it mentions that if you want to inspire the heart of the male or the man, one of the important things to do is to approach it with sweet words, which is also corroborated by John Gottman. John Gottman is an incredible relationship expert who studied thousands and thousands of relationships over 40 years and has predicted, with about a 90% success rate, divorce or separation amongst couples. Nice. Based on one principle: how they deal with conflicts. And so he mentions that one of the first things that's important is you have to soften your startup. You have to ensure that most people, whenever conflict come up, they'll say it there and then, not necessarily considerate of time, not necessarily considerate if the partner has to go to work in a few minutes, not necessarily considerate of their own temperament. They just hammer it and they go, well, you're my partner, so you should do this X, Y, or Z.
And you always, or you never. I know, I used to do that. That's so bad.
Yeah. And so what happens is, immediately, it's like, with me, it's like this. Let's go practical examples, right? Let's go with you're always messy. Yeah. You're always untidy. Yeah. Okay, but I tidied up yesterday. So
not to my standards, though.
Not to your standards, yeah. But you immediately back yourself into a corner. Totally. Because that's not actually true. So we often, what men find difficult to stomach or digest is superlatives, or superlatives means
black and white thinking. Yeah.
Yes.
Or like thinking in absolutes. I'm totally guilty of that.
Absolutes, yeah. So instead of actually saying an absolute, it's good to start with something very specific you're talking about. But here's another principle when it comes to feedback. Now, this is really, really interesting. I mean, there's many conflict resolution techniques, but this one's really, really interesting. How do you share the feedback in a way that helps benefit that partner? And this is both genders, doesn't matter who it is. In other words, let's say, give the typical example that the person's late back from work and they haven't called. Okay, so late back from work and they haven't called. And this has happened the 7th time. What typically happens? Comes in, goes, oh my God, you're late. You never called me. You're always late. Why do you always do this to me? You make me feel like number one. You don't care about me. You know, I've got my own, things to be doing, and you don't seem to care. So that's the general thing, that how it would be approached. And then the reaction is, oh, but I'm not always late. But what about Thursday? But what about Tuesday? Like that. So then it gets into an argument.
All, I'm doing all this work, and I'm, providing a beautiful place for you. If I wasn't working, la-di-la-di-la.
Yeah. So that's one way of approaching it. Here's another way. honey,
Yeah, nice
insert quotes. It's funny, yeah, I've heard some really corny indirect addresses for their partners. I'm not even going to repeat it. My phone would melt if you heard it. But okay, comes in. One of the things that I really appreciate, one of the things that I really love doing for you is ensuring that when you come in, that you have your food nice, hot, red, cooked and on time, basically ready for you to eat. If you don't contact me and let me know you're going to be late, what happens? One of two things. Either I'll cook late, which means that you're sitting there and you're starving and you have to wait for food, or I cook it too early and it gets cold. So by the time you come to eat, it's not as flavorsome and as tasty as it can be. So what I need from you is for you to communicate to me well ahead of time that you're going to be late in order for me to serve you in this manner. And if you don't, then what I fear is that we won't have an evening, ritual together. And so therefore our disconnection may grow. So now it's the same feedback you're providing, but it's in a way that he benefits or her.
Yeah. Or even better, say like, and I would love to have this connection with you and to have a really nice evening. Because sometimes it's also like the negative framing of, like if I say our disconnection will grow, the assumption is there's already a disconnection. And the guy would probably go like, what the hell, where's the disconnection? I didn't even know there is one. Even though of course there is one, because we know and you don't know.
Exactly what's happening. And even more, you actually corrected me on something. I'd also like to say that we would try as much as possible, try to refrain from how you're going to benefit. So even I would love this connection, that's still in reference to us. But what we're trying to do is sell it. In other words, with think about any business. It's never, if you buy this, you're going to maximize our profits.
That's true. What are you getting out of it?
They say, what are you getting out of it? Oh, if you buy this product, you spray this product, you're going to get the women. You're going to get this. You're going to get that. So it's all about how they benefit. We need
give
to
me another really specific advice around mess. This is obviously not my current relationship at all, but I have seen that in the past, and I like just for example, the unscrewed or screwed clothes toothpaste tube or mess leaving lying around. That's almost every guy ever. Sure. Generally speaking, of course, not mentioned, or people in the room not included. How do I give that feedback, selling that to them?
Okay.
I don't know.
No, let's explore it.
If you want me to do the cleaning up, you better pull your weight. If that doesn't fly, does it?
It creates a boundary. The man's a kitten. He's going to shut down. He stonewalls. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse come in, and it's a breakdown.
And
it's a breakdown in communication.
The woman feels disconnected. Why is he stonewalling me, etc.? And off goes the crazy cycle.
Yes. So
what do I do instead? How do I get them to be clean?
Yeah, I guess I would kind of challenge it and say, okay, again, if you don't know how it will benefit them to keep the lid screwed on, or if you don't know how it will benefit them to make sure their socks are picked up, if you don't know how it will benefit them to ensure that the toilet seat is down.
Yes. You've got all the answers right there.
Are these the 3 main domesticated, then that means you have to contemplate and think about how they're going to benefit. And it depends from situation to situation.
Give me one for the toilet seat, just because you can. How does it personally benefit you, Michael O., that the toilet seat is down and the toothpaste thing is properly closed?
Well, for me, it's important that if the toilet seat is down and, the toothpaste is, the lid's on and the socks are picked up, what that actually will do is help me. External cleanliness reflects an internal cleanliness. So what it will do is actually help me to expand and free my mind, because I'm helping the environment to be clean. There's loads of research that mentions if an environment is clean, spacious, and looks healthy, it has an effect on my mind. So to lower my own levels of anxiety and to increase my own levels of peace, it's important I keep my environment peaceful. If you go into a messy environment, you have a very messy mind and you're kind of a little bit distracted. If I want to be free, learn more, feel more connected, feel happy and satisfied and grateful for not just myself but others, and also be, let's say, that I want to experience more and just feel good about myself, it's also important that the surroundings I walk into also feel good. And so keeping a toilet seat up,
explaining that. Luckily at the moment that's not an issue I have, but yes, I shall keep that in mind, see how that flies.
And obviously it depends from person to person with
Exactly right.
the example as well.
What else? What else? Like, how are we chasing away our partners? Oh, actually, you know what?
Sure.
There might be the odd guy watching as well. What can they do? Because it's like, of course, as women, we want to know how to communicate better. It would be maybe quite helpful to have the odd piece of advice for the guys as well, so that maybe they can tune in a little bit more with us as well.
Generally speaking, the feminine nature wants to feel like they're number one priority in someone's life.
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at how males or the masculine within a relationship does not allow the feminine within a relationship to feel number one in their life. And again, it's across all relationships, heterosexual, homosexual, it doesn't matter. Any type of relationship, any interaction that we have,
where that polarity exists,
where there's that aspect of two, is masculine and feminine. So what are some of the ways that the masculine will make the feminine feel like they're not number one priority? The first is they may not give attentive presence. In other words, let's say she comes back from work and complains about a colleague who is making her do extra tasks that she doesn't need to, and she's complaining about that. Generally speaking, the masculine will go, oh, why don't you just change departments? Oh, why don't you just complain to your boss?
Giving advice.
Maybe you need to change jobs. Yeah. So because the masculine is more about the accomplishment and the feminine is more about relationship, most of the time when a woman speaks, it's not to get a result, it's actually to discharge an emotion.
Yeah.
And so if he suggests, okay, this is a particular result, it's implying she's incompetent. If she wanted an answer, she'd Google it. She's not looking for an answer.
That's right. She's looking for someone to care.
She's looking for someone to discharge that emotion. And hey, for this 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minutes, I'm number one priority. And then in reflection with that, the feminine will then make him number one priority as well. So a massive way is through listening that they don't necessarily make them number one priority. Another is, I mean, there's multiple, but another would be that he considers his own emotions or friendships as more important or superior, or the job, so
that's
working,
usually the job from my experience.
Usually the job. So the time where it's family time or connection time, instead of doing that, is on a job. And often a third way that's happening with technology as well is the time where you need that listening and presence, they're on the phone. Holding the phone, clutching the phone. And so what happens is, on a subtle level, it starts to communicate, this phone's more important than me. Hey, I want to be number one important. So I may test that by saying something like, oh, would you like to do something today? Or the weather out there looks very nice. If you're not necessarily picking that up, she won't necessarily feel number one priority. So if any, for the masculines who are watching, if there's an issue with keeping and maintaining a relationship, it's often because for multiple times they've not necessarily made that person feel like number one priority. Number one priority means number one them, number two me, number three everything else. That's
exactly right. And it's usually what the self-talk that the feminine then will have is either he doesn't love me or he doesn't care. Doesn't love me, doesn't care, doesn't respect me. That's the stuff that's the upsets, and then that can spin that off where we can go into like a negative cycle of then acting in certain ways. And as feminine energy, when we close that off and mostly for self-protection purposes come into a more masculine energy where we're kind of opposing and fighting rather than weaving and leaning in, then that makes it more difficult to come back from that and soften again into being receptive to each other. And I know that like once my wall goes up, it's really hard to bring it back down and becoming receptive again, which is what I think ultimately the masculine energy is attracted to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let the receptivity, because generally speaking, again, it's very general, but the general principle of the masculine and feminine is that the masculine approaches the feminine to experience satisfaction. The feminine approaches the masculine to experience consideration. So what happens is that generally speaking, the masculine wants to feel like they are able to satisfy intellectually, emotionally, physically, and spiritually their partner, and the other way around for the consideration. And so being satisfied is actually the experience of love that the masculine is looking to experience and have in that
And
connection.
that's the interesting thing. And that's all the receptivity, because I
Yes.
can get all the great things, but if I don't express that, we could call it gratitude, or it's not even about the reciprocity. I used to think for years when I was young, is if I receive from my partner back then, I should be able to pay back in equal ways. I should be able to give exactly what I've been getting in order to keep it fair. That was the way I was brought up. And it took me a long time. I think it's only been in the last few years to even realize, it might have even been you who that came up was teaching me, that it's more about expressing the gratitude, expressing the appreciation for what is being given, and make the other person, make the partner feel like they are able to light me up, to satisfy me, to make me happy. And then in words express that and feed that back. And I know that when I was married many years ago, that's something I barely ever did, because I didn't have the awareness of how much lifeblood that was to my partner back then.
Yeah, definitely.
I just didn't know that mattered. And I would have undercut that, sometimes making ironic comments, or, like cutting the other part. It's not like I do that with other people for fun all the time, but how much that hurts and how much it undermines the male self-esteem, I had no idea, I swear. I wish I had known that back then.
I mean, and yeah, I think that the feminine nature doesn't realize just how powerful their words are, 100%. And just how powerful how you express your words are. You can say anything to your partner. I mean, because sometimes people will say, how do I tell my partner that he stinks? Or, how do I tell my partner that what he's doing is not a good job? You can actually tell your partner anything as long as it's gently considered and you're softening that startup.
And respectful, huh? Like I've just recently done some reading about the different meanings masculine, feminine energy has, with we are as females, as feminine energy, looking for love. For men, you guys are looking even more than that, for respect. And when we are like treating you like fellow females, giving and receiving and expecting that lovingness, that's great. But what you need even more from us is the respect, which is the receptivity and appreciation for what it is that you are doing for us.
That's their medium of love.
And that is a very interesting distinction for me.
Exactly that. That's their medium for love. See, Connie Podesta makes the point that the reason why people have an affair, most people think that it's because of just for extra sexual connections, but actually what she mentions in her research isn't so much that, it's because they stopped feeling good in the presence of their partner.
And feeling that they are able to satisfy them, make them happy, give them what they need. And then somebody else comes along and puts them on a pedestal and thinks they're amazing and awesome and great. And it's just this, okay, I can give to that person. Yeah.
And then therefore it creates that kind of channel and link and emotional connections happen and all that. So as we were saying before, if you're able to, in a way, give feedback, share feedback, and help them feel good about what they're given, that is the reciprocation they're looking for. Because otherwise we get, as you're saying, we get into a situation where generally the feminine thinks that they need to do something in order to be valuable. And we've got this idea that we have to, the more I do, the more I'm valuable. It's not the more you do,
the more I'll be loved.
Yeah, yes,
totally.
but
That
it's
used
not
to
that.
be me to a T. It's not that.
It's not that. It's who you are. That's what's valued. It's a switch. So you can actually not do much in a relationship mechanically, and your partner's completely happy and satisfied emotionally, because the emotional reciprocation is there, when on a platform he's trying to serve you through the physical or the mechanical. Everyone wins.
So the key here, if we're bringing it back to the topic we're talking about, like the one thing we're not doing that messes up our relationships, or the one thing we need to do, is actually being receptive to, and kind of tapping into this being willing and able to receive, being willing and able to express appreciation or gratitude, and being willing, and I think this is what you brought up very early in the conversation, willing to know ourselves enough, and this goes both ways, masculine and feminine, know ourselves enough to know what it is that we truly need and what it is that we're willing and able to provide, and have those conversations early on in the relationships, that we know whether it's even a match. Like if what you want to give doesn't match up with what I want to receive or what I need, and I express this, and it's just something that you don't have to offer, then whether we are the right people for each other, not because it's good enough or not good enough, just because like honoring who we are, and that's the kind of stuff where we can't expect the other person to change.
Couldn't summarize it better myself.
Thank you. Awesome. So now, because of timing reasons, we'll probably wrap up this conversation. I trust we're going to have plenty more, because this is just like such an untapped field, and you have so much interesting information to provide that we're being receptive to. Thank you very much for that. Stroking your mail right
receiving.
there. That's right. But if people would want to work with you, I know you have different offers. I know you have recently published an e-course people can take to really tap into their untapped relationship potential. You do some one-on-one work as well. How can people find you, and what is it that you have to offer? We will paste the information into the comment section underneath the video, but maybe you can share how to best tap into your wisdom.
Sure. I have a spiritual science of attraction course. It's a course that goes through all the specific myths around attracting that twin flame or that compatible partner, and helps you to systematically go through exactly what you need to do to position yourself in order to find an ideal partner. Link will be in the description. I've also got Forgive Yourself and Letting Go courses that help a person to drop resentment and drop bitterness and anger from the past, so it doesn't affect their present relationships and their present connections, and it helps them to experience more love. And I'm also working with children. I am helping train children between the ages of 7 and 16 in life skills, confidence building, resilience building, yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. And I can put a link in the description as well for children to also participate in that. It basically is an initiative under Zen movement, and I've been awarded an instructor position, and it allows a child to start building character that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily in the general curriculum. So it's an incredible initiative, and it's something I'm very proud to be part of. I post masculine feminine principles on my Instagram and Facebook, so that's one of the best ways you can connect with me. And if you ever have any comments or questions, please share with me and Henrike and everybody, so that we can hear what you took away from this discussion as well.
Exactly. Like the comment section of this video is going to be just right for this. If you want, leave your comments. We'll probably both be checking who has commented and what has been said, and be replying at least in the first few days. And yes, as always, if you like our video content, if you enjoy what our channel has to offer, we would love if you would follow our channel and get regular updates about the new videos we are releasing. And otherwise, have a fantastic day. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. And I trust we will talk again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.